Happy Father's Day out there to all dads. And this is Aubrey, my little daughter, and being a dad to her has been the greatest joy, one of the greatest joys in my life. And all those joys have brought lots of responsibilities too. And so let me just say that all those responsibilities are worth all of the joy that she brings to our life. And so dads out there, continue to be that influence into parents, into your kids' life. And I just want to say happy Father's Day to each and every one of you today.
Yep, that's not going anywhere. Hey guys, happy Father's Day. I hope that you have a great day, and I wanted to encourage you and remind you that, guys, we always need to be seeking the Lord in all that we do, but especially as fathers. I truly feel like there is no greater calling than being a parent. And guys, we have an opportunity to step up. And some of you may be saying, well, why do I need Jesus to be a parent? Dude, I need Jesus to go to Walmart. So have a happy Father's Day. Love you guys. Thank you for all you do.
Well, on this Father's Day weekend, the words of wisdom I want to give to you are the very words of wisdom my dad gave to me many, many times. When I'd come to my dad, I'd be frustrated, I'd be challenged, I'd want to throw in the towel, maybe on a relationship or a job or some sports thing that I was working on. My dad's go-to phrase, and I can still hear his voice saying it, is this: "You'll figure it out." In other words, don't quit quite yet. Just give it a little more time. Keep trying, keep persevering. And man, that phrase, those words of wisdom saved me more times than I can count. And so for those of you guys, men, who are kind of feeling like it's time for you to throw in the towel, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's time just to keep on keeping on. Stick with it. You'll figure it out. Go to God, seek those men of wisdom, and don't give up too soon, too quick.
At the small group that I'm in, we talked about a quote that is attributed to St. Francis of Assisi that says, "Preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words." Now, I don't know if St. Francis really said that, and probably we need to use our words to preach the gospel, but I think the idea is that sometimes the way we live our lives says more than the words that we use. If you're a dad and you're at Crossbridge, then you're in the right place. You're going to hear the gospel preached with words. And I would encourage you to join a small group and to spend time reading God's word for yourself. It's going to make you a better dad, a better husband, and just a better person. And maybe more importantly, your kids are watching. And maybe your actions will speak louder than your words. Happy Father's Day.
It is so good to see each and every one of you here today, mamas, kiddos, neighbors, all of you joining us online. And for those of you in Peru, welcome Peru crew. And let me just take a second to say this very special greeting. Hey, to all you dads, stepdads, foster dads, daddy-os, granddads, great-granddads. So great to have you here on this Father's Day weekend. Now, since it is Father's Day weekend, I thought let's do something a little special, something dad-centric as we spend some time together today. I don't know if you've noticed this about me yet, but I'm a lover of dad humor. If you don't believe me, just ask my kid, or my kids, excuse me. So one of the things I thought would be fun for us to do today is let's see the level of dadness in your life by sharing with you some common Father's Day or dad phrases. And I'm going to start the phrase for you, and let's see if you can finish the sentence or respond to the question I'm being asked with your neighbor around you. And there will be dad points awarded for these, okay? So get to know your neighbor if you haven't yet. This is a great opportunity for you to make a friend here today. Let me kick off with the first one. Here's the first dad phrase. When asked, "Did you get a haircut?" a dad will most likely respond with this phrase. Guess with your neighbor. Ready, set, go. Yes, I'm here. Some of you said it. Let's all say it together. Ready? Nope. I got them all cut. Very good. Very daddy in phrase. Good work. You got that one. What about this next one? One that I've been known to say before. When a dad sees someone he knows but does not remember the friend's name, he will most often respond with what title or titles? Take a second and guess with your neighbor. Ready, set, go. Online, I want to see these in the comment sections as well. You're participating as well, okay? Just some of the answers. Let me show you what some of them are. Let's go ahead and put those up there if you'd be so kind. Acceptable answers: chief, sport, tiger, champ. Any that I missed? Buddy, that's a really good one. Very good. All right, you're doing great. First two. The last two are a couple of my favorites. How about this next one? My dad said this all the time. When the server brings the bill at a restaurant, what's the most likely response from dad? Oh, some of you already said it. Turn to guess with your neighbors. Oh, you said it. Right, here it is. Let's say it together. Ready? What's the damage? What's the damage? But my friends, I saved the best one for last. This one's worth 5 dad points, okay? So here's the last one, if you could put that one up here. When looking for studs in the wall to hang shelves or pictures, the dad will first take the stud finder and do what? Some of you got it. Here, there was the correct answer. Point to his chest and yell. Found one. Yes, that's exactly right. I found this picture, this meme online. I felt it was appropriate for a scientific fact. It's impossible for a man to use a stud finder without first scanning himself with it and stating to the room, found one. Good job, all of you men. Good work. Hey, if you got at least one, just take a second and pat yourself on the back. Very well done, guys. All kidding aside, if you're a dad or you're not a dad, if you're whoever it is that you are here, we're so glad that you are here this weekend. It's going to be a special weekend for each and every one of us. Whether you have something incredible planned or not, it is just good to be gathered with all of you on this special weekend. I thought about this as we were talking about Father's Day weekend and to get a little more serious for a moment. I think besides the word God, the word dad may be the most powerful 3-letter word in the English vocabulary. Even when I bring up this word dad, some of you immediately start feeling these emotions. Things start happening within you, don't they? I mean, think about it. Even the hardest of man fights back tears when they see this movie scene. If you've ever seen Kevin Costner, Field of Dreams, he looks over to his dad and he says, Dad, can we have a catch? And every dad's fighting back tears in that moment. Even the strongest of us has pretended that we're fighting allergies when we see a fish named Marlin search the ocean for his son Nemo. And it's a cartoon. Who of us hasn't felt a little bit too close to home when we watched that epic movie with a father and his son, even though he didn't know it was his dad at the time? It's, of course, Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. And he thought, man, that's what my dysfunctional family may be like. It's interesting, isn't it, when you think about all these father-son or father-daughter dynamics? There are few relationships that have the impact of a fatherly relationship than that of a dad. And I thought about that this weekend, and for those of us who are here and you remember dad or what that experience was like with your dad, that was a formative time in your life. So if you had just a moment to kind of describe what your dad was like, what that relationship with him kind of consisted of, I wonder what bullet points you would put down. And I do pray that you're taking notes because this is something to reference back to. Maybe that was a long time ago. Maybe dad's long since passed. But what are those characteristics, those traits that you remember about your relationship with him? Maybe it was fun. Maybe it was jovial. Maybe it was kind of hard. Maybe it was difficult. Maybe he was a disciplinarian. I thought about that as I was thinking about my relationship with my dad. Dad passed away just 3 years ago, very unexpectedly in the middle of the night. But I thought about how would I define my dad? And a few pictures came to my mind when I thought about him and the influence that he had on my life. The first one I wanted to share is this picture. I wanted to show this because some of you wondered if it really does snow that much in North Dakota. Here's your answer. I'll never forget on this specific day, I just talked to my dad and said, Dad, why don't we have a snowblower? All the other neighbors have a snowblower. And my dad, in true dad fashion, looked back at me and said, why would I need a snowblower when I have you? Yeah, you've been there too. This next picture is one of my favorite ones of me and my dad. It's a picture of my dad realizing that I'd finally gotten taller than him. And so he grabbed my head right as my mom said, 1, 2, 3, and she snapped the picture to push me down. And he stood on his tiptoes so he could still be just a little bit taller than me. It's funny the things that you remember about influential relationships like that, isn't it? Now, again, I'm not sure exactly what your relationship was, like with your father or that person of influence in your life. Mine was somewhat complicated. I butted heads with my dad more than anyone else in the entire world. There was nobody that influenced my life more than my mom, but no one that impacted my life more than my dad. And I think there's a subtle but important difference between being influenced and impacted. But for those of us here today, it's important for us to realize what that impact has been. As I look back at my dad's relationship with me and how he influenced and molded and shaped me, I'm so thankful that I had him as a dad in my life, even though it was a complicated relationship at times. I mean, he was a man of faith and of courage, of boldness and determination. He was stubborn and hard-headed and so very loving and kind. Now that for some of you are sitting here looking at me and saying, thanks a lot, Keith, that is not my experience at all. And some of you may be even wondering, what does this mean for me? And I would say this from the beginning, no matter what your experience with your dad has been like so far, no matter what Father's Day and this weekend brings to mind, I am so thankful that you are here. If this is a day of wounds for you, this is a place for you to find healing, to walk with other people on the journey with you, that we are not in this alone, that we are a family, that we are a body of Christ. To use a good, I think, Father's Day analogy, we are all on the offensive line together. We are relying on one another. We are in the trenches together. We are on that team together. And we want to let you know that we are here for you and with you. And I believe God has something powerful to speak into your life today. Because really, whether you're a dad, or if you're a mom, if you're single, or whatever the case may be, here's the reality. Each and every one of you is going to be an influential person in someone's life. And when people think about you, much like we said at the Mother's Day weekend, what is it that they will remember? What legacy is it that you will leave? What do you want others to say of you as they remember you and the life that you live and how you impacted them? I think this is a question that can form and shape us in what we're doing today. And I want to take just a special moment for those of you who've maybe come from some really difficult home environments. Maybe it's dysfunctional, and your family put the fun in dysfunctional. That's just so messed up, and man, it was a challenging situation. Can I just tell you that I'm so sorry if that's been your experience? But I also want to remind you that there is hope for you yet today. And that as we sing so often in one of our favorite songs here, if I'm not dead, he's not done. That there is a time and a moment for you that God ain't finished with you yet. If you believe it, say amen. And that's my hope and my prayer for you, that your heart will be open to what God desires to speak to you today. Today we're going to talk about what does it mean, since we're in this Together We series. We're going to talk about together we build each other up. Now, we're reading God's message. Turn with me to the book of Romans. Romans chapter 14, verse 19. One verse, but in this one verse are two really important things, I think, that are necessary for us as we think about the legacy that we leave. However you're reading God's message, I invite you to stand with me today. Pray you brought your Bible or your device. Follow along on the screen if you'd be so kind. This is what Romans 14, verse 19 says to us. So let us do all we can to live in peace, and let us work hard to build up one another. Would you pray with me? Lord, you're already moving powerfully through this time. And I was just thinking about that song we just sang, that you won't fail us. No, you won't. And I'm trusting and believing that for this very moment in this time. I don't know who's joining us online. I don't know who needs to hear what in this moment, in this time, but I know that you're faithful. I know that you're here. And I know that you're speaking. So, Lord Jesus, as only you can convict us, inspire us, transform us, motivate us, do whatever it is that you desire to do in this place. And as we pray almost each and every single week, that none of us leave or log off the same as when we came in, but rather that we leave knowing that we've encountered the living God in our midst. We believe you for it all, Jesus, and we ask it in your name. Amen. You may be seated. Our passage talks about building each other up. And it reminds me that we've got a lot of famous builders in the world, don't we? It seems like every channel, every streaming service has some sort of construction type show on right now. And these construction people, these builders, have become kind of famous. Let me show you just a collaboration of some of them. We've all heard of Chip Gaines, right? You remember Tim the Toolman Taylor and what he used to do in the 90s? He would do that. Bob Vila, anyone remember Bob Vila, kind of the OG, right? He started back on PBS, public broadcasting. And we even start young with our kids. Bob the Builder. Can we fix it? Yes, we can. You have kids, you have grandkids. Hey, let me ask you a quick question here. Anyone ever attempted to build something before? A bench, a shelf, treehouse? Some of you, yeah. Me too. Anyone tried and failed? Anyone ever failed at a building project before? Good, you're not the only one. Some of you spouses are trying to raise your hand of your spouse right now. It's interesting to see that. Don't feel bad. Again, other people have failed as well. I found some great examples of this, like this builder who decided to build a handrail in front of a door, right? You had the one job, man. But that's not near as good as the next one. What do you do when your door won't fit around the toilet in your bathroom? You just do this, right? So guys, take great heart if you've tried and failed at building up before. Now our passage tells us, hey, we should build each other up, but it doesn't mean that you have to have prior construction experience. As a matter of fact, God desires to do a building up through you through the power of his Holy Spirit. And today I want to talk to you about what does that look like? What does it mean as together we build each other up? As a matter of fact, you just turn to your neighbor and tell them, together we build each other up. Ready, set, go. Together we build each other up. There's two things in our passage today that I want to make sure that we grasp. And the first one may seem a little bit interesting. I want us to really sit with it, dwell with it for just a moment. But again, one verse, two really important things that it tells us if we're really going to build each other up. Here's what the first one says. So let us do all we can to, say it with me, live in peace. Let's sit with that for a second. Live in peace. When the word peace comes to your mind, what do you think of? What does God mean when he says live in peace? And how do we actually practically live this out in a world that seems like it's constantly not at peace, right? I thought about that for a moment and I started to say, Lord, how is it that you were speaking through your word? How is it that you're calling us to live in a way that sets a legacy so that as people see us, as dads, as moms, as everyone, that we are a people that do all we can to live in peace or live at peace with one another. And if you're anything like me, sometimes the best way to understand a concept is to look at the opposite. So I thought, well, what's the opposite of living in peace? It's living in conflict, isn't it? So quick question, how many of you have some conflict in your life or know where you can find some? Good. When I was thinking about this passage and thinking about conflict, I couldn't help but think about a time where my lovely wife and I were experiencing a little bit of conflict. I know, hard to believe pastors fight, right? But we do. So in these moments of times, it was a few years ago, it's when my mom and dad were still alive, and we were back at their home in Olathe, Kansas. And I don't know why, but we were just kind of at each other the whole day. Married people, you ever have those moments before? Someone just said, oh my, I feel so good right now. Yes, we do. I can't even remember what the fight was about. We were just kind of nipping at each other the whole day, and finally gets to the end of the night. You know, we were staying at my mom and dad's for a few days, and so you're out of your routine and your rhythm, and things are just odd. So we got to the spot where finally things are settling down, and I said, okay, hon, let's just sit down. Let's watch a movie together. Let's try to make the best of the rest of this day. And so we walked up to the kitchen, and we're getting ready to do a movie, and my mom had some microwave popcorn. So I get the microwave popcorn, I put it in the microwave, I set it for just for the right time, click the button, it pops, it's beautiful, wonderful. Open up the door and open it out to let the steam out. Now my job was to pop the popcorn, my wife's job was to take the popcorn and to put it into the bowl. So at that point, I took the popcorn and then, you release the steam. I'm being a good husband, right? Look at me, just going the extra mile. And I took it and I said, babe, here you go. And I handed it over to her with that corner because it gets a little hot, right? And I assumed that she had it. I didn't actually communicate to her that, hey, I would like you to take this. And so in that moment where I thought she had it and she thought I still had it, I dropped it. And popcorn goes everywhere, all our beautiful, wonderful snack. And I did the thing that sometimes we as husbands do. I looked at her and I was like, right? And it's funny, guys, I will never forget this as long as I live. Before I could even utter some words from this moment, she looks back at me and she goes, now just stop it. I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking that was my fault, that I should have grabbed the bag. But the reality is you didn't actually tell me. You just grunted and said, here you go. And I didn't know what you were saying. And I was talking to your mom. So really the reality is, as much of it is my fault, it's just as much your fault. And she turned away and walked away. You know those moments? Yes, right? Isn't that wonderful? I love that. There are these times in your life where someone knows you so well that they can predict the very words that you were going to say, that you're just absolutely in shock. And I was like, oh man, how did she know all that stuff? She's like, in my brain. And in that moment, it was really a crossroad in my life, and that decision in that day. I said, I could either, in this crossroad, choose to take the path of peace, to live in peace, or I could choose to escalate the conflict. This was the choice that I had. What choice would I make? And because I'm a man of God, because I'm a pastor, because I'm a professional Christian, I do this for a living. You all know what I chose, right? I chose to escalate conflict, yes. And I went in there and I gave her some little, things that I was holding on for a while and some snappy comebacks. I'm like, woo! And the rest of that day did not go well for me. Hey, we all admitted just a second ago that we have some conflict or know where we can find some. Isn't it interesting how when those choices come in life, or we have a crossroads, it is so tempting to take the path not that leads to peace, but to leads to winning, isn't it? Ever wondered about that? Why is it that we sometimes so often choose to win? Hey, you know what it is for me? It feels good to win, right? In that moment, I like to win. Not to mention the fact that even when you win, you actually lose. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But in those moments, sometimes the immediacy of winning takes precedence over a path and a longer journey of what truly leads to peace, doesn't it? But God, through His Word, says to us, hey, when that crossroad comes and you are so tempted to escalate conflict, to live in a way that is opposite of the way of peace, as my people, as my beloved sons and daughters, take that path even though it's longer, even though it's harder, even though you're not going to get the same feeling of winning in that moment. In the end, it is going to be so worth it. Live in peace or at peace. This sometimes seems like an odd thing for us to talk about on Father's Day weekend, doesn't it? Because I know I'm a manly man. I like to think that, right? And when we talk about manly things, you know, it's like more conflict type of stuff. Like we like UFC, and we like football, and we like war movies, and we like things that blow up. Yeah, we like fast cars and loud cars and all the things. And you're sitting there thinking, peace kind of seems like the opposite of the stuff that we really like. And I get that. When I think about some of those things that are conflict heavy, football, think about UFC, it seems like in those moments, it seems like there's a lot of strength in those moments. And let me be clear, there is. Those NFL players, I could not hold my own for half a millisecond with them out in that field. There is some serious strength going on there, my friends. But can I tell you, there's even a greater strength that's deeper than that? And here's what it is. Strength under control. Strength controlled and used by God the Holy Spirit. In other words, those moments where when you have all this strength, you use it not to win, not to escalate, not to get that snappy comeback or the thing that it is in your life, but rather you use all that strength that you have and you funnel it towards peace, towards reconciling, towards forgiving, towards extending grace, towards saying, I'm sorry. And I personally believe that some of the manliest men of all manly men are those who have enormous strength, but they don't use strength for themselves to win, but they use that strength to pursue peace. You know, I believe this because of Jesus. Jesus, who was given all strength and all authority, what did He often do? He gave up that authority. He gave up that strength. He willingly surrendered of His own life to forgive and give grace and extend that one to each other. To be a peacemaker. What a legacy to leave. And I know what some of you are thinking, Keith, I don't know if I could do that. And here's the thing, because conflict happens in my life, and it's just part of who I am. And I get that, but let me say it like this. Being a peacemaker doesn't mean that there aren't battles. It means when we find ourselves or put ourselves in those conflicting situations that we choose in that fork in the road, I'm going to pursue the path that leads to peace. Reconciliation, forgiveness, grace, saying I'm sorry. I thought about how do I visualize this in a way that I pray resonates, especially for those of us who are guys here today. And I couldn't help but think about something that we see so often when conflict happens in our lives. I thought about this image. This is a good image. I couldn't find any Bears ones. I'm sorry, because Bears are usually in that bottom position too very often. I just couldn't. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Poor Bears fans, right? We can't all be Chiefs fans. I'm so sorry, guys. But I thought about this for a minute. Conflict happens every single play. And for some reason, like in us, in our life, sometimes conflict happens every day. But being a peacemaker says, in the midst of that conflict, I'm going to be that person who reaches out and extends a hand and saying, but let's find a way to peace. And isn't it true? Could we pick that picture up one more time? Isn't it true that sometimes we're that person on the top, that we're the conflictor? And we're the one that has to extend the hand and say, I'm sorry, would you please forgive me? I should have known that you didn't have the popcorn bag in hand. And sometimes we're the person who's been conflicted, right? And we're the ones that sometimes pride says, I don't want your help. I can do this on my own. But rather it says, no, I too will swallow my pride and we will pursue peace together. Hey, my friends, together we build each other up. You really want to build each other up. God, through His Word, says one of the legacies for us is to do all we can to live in peace. And that's an important part of the phrase, right? Not do some of what you can. Not just do enough to check the box, but rather exhaust all options to pursue peace, to be a peacemaker, to take all of that strength that God has given you and use it not for yourself, but instead choose to funnel that into, how do I bring peace in the midst of this situation? That's the first thing. But then I love the second part of this passage. Again, it says it so clear. And let us work hard. I love that. Not just laze around. Let us work hard to, say it with me, build up one another. Now, God uses the Apostle Paul here, and he actually instructs him to use these words. That was a construction word. This phrase, build up one another, literally means to have stones or bricks or blocks laid on top of each other. And that reminded me, that's a lot of something that our kids and I did when I was a younger dad. And if you're like me, maybe you've had some of those times where you had these blocks. Anyone have these fun little blocks when you're a family? This is one of the fun things that you do with your kid. You sit there, and when they're young and they're just learning how to walk and talk, one of those favorite things is they build up these towers pretty quickly, don't they? Any moments you get a little bit taller, and as things get a little bit bigger, what happens to the tower? Gets a little more shaky, right? And so you have to be a little bit more careful as you're building this up, but then eventually something happens, and someone comes by, and it's usually a sibling or some kid in the nursery, and what do? Right? What took so long to build up can be torn down so very quickly, right? And I thought about that. Isn't that sometimes the way things happen in life? That in life, man, many of us are looking to be built up, and I pray that in those moments that you have people who are build you up type of people. People look to you and say, I'm so glad that you're my friend. I'm so glad that you've been a faith partner for me. I can't believe that God allows me to be your spouse. Man, of all the dads in the world, that I could be your dad. What an incredible blessing. I pray that you don't have to think for more than a couple seconds before you think about those people who have built you up. But the reality is that we're also living in a world where people are quick to tear down, right? As a matter of fact, sometimes what took so long to build up can so quickly be torn down with phrases like, what a disappointment you are. I wish we never would have got married. Things in those natures, they maybe have been said one time, but they resonate for a long, long time. And so God, through his word, through his message, says to us, let's be those type of people that build each other up. In other words, in a world that's filled with salty people, in a world that's filled with people who are throwing shade and tearing down, here's what I want you to be. I want you to be a builder up. For those salty people, you bring a little bit of sweetness. For those who are throwing some shade, you bring the sunshine. I think that's such an important thing to do. And it's interesting, isn't it? When you think about such a simple thing as building someone up, what an impact it can make just by using your words and your actions to speak a little life into someone. I thought about this right after we got here. Something happened in my life, and I wanted to share it with you because I think it's a good example of how even the smallest of things can begin building into people's lives and make a profound difference. I was spending time at one of my favorite coffee shops. None of you is surprised by that, right? Because you know my love of coffee. But on this one particular day, it was near the holiday season, near the Christmas season, and it was especially busy, busier than normal. And some people must have called in sick because they were really slow going. And they had some things that they weren't getting orders right. And so you know what happens? You forgot my almond milk and you put in soy milk, and how could you? How dare you? And so people were kind of getting on them a little bit. And I started to see this thing happen, and I could see the looks on the workers' faces. They were so despondent. They were so torn down. And I said, Lord, what are you calling me to do in this moment? How can I be a light bearer in the midst of this throwing shade? How can I be sweet in the midst of this saltiness? How can I build up when everyone else is tearing down? So when I got up there, it was my turn. Before I even ordered my coffee, I said, I just need you guys to know how thankful I am that you are here. Not just because you give me amazing caffeine, that's a gift, but rather that you are here serving. And I just want to say thank you for all you do. You guys are a blessing to me. And I started to learn all their names and know all their names. And each day when I'd go back, part of what my job was, my responsibility was to call them by name and thank them. I came back a little bit later in the middle of one of those busy seasons. I brought them a whole bunch of treats and some goodies, and I laid them on there before them, and they just started eating them, and they were so thankful. It started this really cool relationship where to this very day, I walk in those doors, and you know what they do? Hey, Keith's here! Woo! It's great. One day, Reagan and I were meeting there because it's coffee. Why not, right? And so we're meeting there later in the afternoon, and Reagan got there a little earlier than I did, and I walk in those doors, and when I walked in, they said, hey, it's Keith. And then they saw me walk up and greet my wife, gave her a kiss and gave her a hug, and they go, wait a minute, you're Mrs. Keith? Hey, it's Mrs. Keith. I love it. Isn't it interesting how just by taking time to build someone up with words and actions, what a difference you can make? A few extra seconds, a few bucks for some treats. And here's my challenge for you and for me, my friends. Be the Bob the Builder of your world. Be the Bob the Builder of your world. There are so many people in this world, and if we haven't seen it, just look at social media for a minute, who are constantly tearing people down. In the midst of all that shade throwing, be a little bit of light for someone. What a difference it can make. As a matter of fact, I want to give you a little dry run right now. What if you just turned to someone and said, you're just amazing. You're just amazing. Or what if you said, you're doing great. What if you turned to someone right now and said, are you getting younger? What a wonderful thing, right? Just take a second. To those around you, use one of those phrases. Ready, set, go. Online. You are amazing. You're doing great. Are you getting younger? Isn't that awesome? You look happier right now. You do. Online, I'm assuming the same thing is true for you as well. Here's the thing, my friends. Some of you are looking at, yeah, Keith, but you don't get my life. We have to have some really hard conversations. I can't always be that warm, fuzzy guy, and you kind of seem like that anyway, so you're just strange. But here's what I would say. I know. I have to have hard conversations. I'm a dad. I'm a pastor. It's not all hunky-dory, rosy stuff. We have to deal with some serious issues. But it is possible to still build people up in a way that doesn't tear them down and still deal with the issue. Oftentimes I'll say, don't attack the person, attack the issue. Attack the lie, attack the hurt, attack the wound that's been done. But you don't have to tear down that person and you're doing it. You can still build someone up while tearing down the issue that tries to separate you. It's just an important lesson for you to learn. I think it's such an incredible thing for me because I was blessed to have a dad, and his name literally is Bob. My dad's name was Bob, and he really was Bob the Builder. My dad, especially later in his life, was constantly building me up. He was so proud of me, loved me so very much. And one of his things was he would come to whatever church I was ministering at the time, and he would literally take the stack of my business cards out of it and put them in his pocket. Because he would visit us multiple times a year, and then what he wanted to make sure is he had cards wherever he went. And if he met you, here's how it would go. Hey, my name is Bob. Here's my son's business card. He's a pastor. You should listen to his service. And that's what we would do. And he was such a builder up, and it even got a little bit embarrassing. Like, Dad, you don't have to tell everyone. I mean, my wife knows. You don't have to keep telling her, right? It's a thing. But he was so into building people up. It was such an incredible thing in these moments, and I'll never forget the impact that it had on me. Just that simple move, that simple moment of how much that impacted me. In one specific ministry, I'll never forget the time where we had a chance to renovate. We had bought an old Walmart building. Our church had outgrown their current space, and so we actually renovated this old Walmart building and converted it into a church. And I had the chance of sharing with some people, what we did and how God was at work and how he was moving. It was a really cool story. There was a lady there who came to our church and got saved, got her life right with the Lord. And I said, Lord Lee, what is it that brought you here? She said, I just knew God was up to something. He was calling my heart. And she goes, Pastor, I got to tell you something. It's going to be a little odd worshiping here. I said, Lord Lee, why is that? She goes, well, I actually got arrested here for shoplifting. Isn't that great? She goes, I had to do the perp walk right where the altar is out of the store. She goes, now I'm praising Jesus where I got arrested. I'm like, transformation and grace, my friend. That's how God does it. I love that, right? Yeah, that's good. But I'll never forget the time where I got to show my dad all the stuff, and I got to tell him all these cool stories. And this is where we found, contraband material. They had put it in under the ceiling tiles and the toilet seats, and we found stuff, and it was crazy. But at the end of the time when the tour was all done, I sat down with my dad, and my dad just looked at me, he put his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, Keith, I'm just so proud of you. And in that moment, I don't know why, but waterworks, right? People had said they were proud of me, but why did this mean so much to me? Because it's my dad. Because it's Dad, right? I mean, there's just something about those moments when someone of such an influence in your life says something like that, you really can't even put a price tag on how much that means. So let me just take a minute. I've tried to make this inclusive to everyone, but let me make sure to speak to dads. Dads, I know you know this, but let me say it again. Dads, your words, they carry a lot of weight, so use them wisely. Your words carry a lot of weight. Use them wisely. In those moments when discipline has to come, please make sure to use them wisely. Filter them. Ask Holy Spirit, before anything comes out of my lips, make sure to remind me how this will be received. Dads, such a critically important thing for us. And for those of you who are father-like figures, what a perfect opportunity for you to speak some life into some people's lives that you have influence over. Dads, your words carry a lot of weight. use them wisely. I'll never forget that time then, just shortly after we'd finished our ministry assignment in Parsons, Kansas, my dad passed away. And it was one of those moments where it hits pretty hard, right? But I'll never forget as we traveled down there, he passed away in the middle of the night, and we went down to take care of things. And as we got to where my dad was in the funeral home, gave us the rest of his belongings, you know what one of the coolest things was? Anyone want to guess what I found in the pants pocket? 5 of them. And my mom said that he never went anywhere without them. And what a moment it was, that even though I didn't know, he was still building up. He was still building up. And moms, dads, I know sometimes things seem like they're not getting through. And they don't appreciate it when you watch the kids or the grandkids or when you watch the dogs. They're not listening. They're constantly rolling their eyes. And all you're trying to do is help. My friends, remember, God is doing something that you can't see behind the scenes. So don't you give up. Keep building each other up and trust and believe what God can do in ways that you may not ever see. So here's your challenge this week, my friends. This isn't just for dads. This is for each and every one of you. 2 things, right? Number 1, in word and in action, build someone up this week. And when you get to that crossroads and you have a choice to make, will I choose conflict or will I choose the path that leads to peace? You know what choice you should make. And I pray that you will make according to God's Holy Spirit at work inside of you. Even though it's longer, even though it's harder, I'm going to choose that path that leads to peace. And so for those of you, maybe the best thing that you can do right now is before you even leave this service or leave this parking lot, you call your kid, you text your kid and say, hey, I just want to let you know, I am so thankful that God let me be your dad or your mom. I can't believe I get to be your spouse. Of all the people in the world, I get to be your spouse. Oh my goodness, to have a friend like you in my life, I'm the one that's truly blessed. Use those words. And then another thing, action. Husbands, I know this is going to be somewhat controversial, but I'm going to challenge you anyways. Maybe do the dishes, right? Oh, I'm never coming back to this church again, right? Do a load of laundry, open the door, tell your wife you love her, tell your kids what a blessing they are, and even try one of these things. Oh, hug was a bad word in my house, Pastor Keith. Okay, start with a side hug and work your way up from there, okay? Be amazed at what God can do through you. No matter who you are here today, no matter how dysfunctional life has been, if you're not dead, God's not done. Today could be a day where that cycle of dysfunction begins to change and you become a person of influence that others look back to you and say, man, how blessed was I to have that person in my life who built me up. What a blessing it would be. I'll do things a little different as we close today. I want to invite the praise team to come forward. We're going to sing about the great things that God has done and is going to do. But as we do that, I want to ask every single dad, every single male in this place to stand. And if you're available online, would you do that same thing? If you're a male, would you please stand up? If you have a Y chromosome, okay, that's good. Stand up, guys. Hey, I just want to pray over you, and then we're going to stand together and pray together. But here's the thing, guys. I know, because I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a worker. Man, we don't get a lot of extra boosts of assistance in this world. And sometimes the journey's hard, sometimes it's long, and sometimes you don't feel like you've got anywhere to go. But no matter what your experience has been with your father, I want you to know you've got a heavenly Father who wants you to know him, wants you to know the plans and the purposes that he has for you, wants to walk alongside you to grant you wisdom, to grant you insight, to reveal all the plans and the purposes that he has for you. So, man, I just want to pray over you right now. So, everybody, would you just bow your head and close your eyes with me today? Lord God, I don't know what each and every one of these men has going on in their hearts and their lives, but I know that you are present with us, that your word declares to us that you are a good, good Father that loves his kids, that embraces them, that calls them, that challenges them, that has equipped them for such a time as this. So, Father, for these dads that are here today, give them patience, give them wisdom, remind them that their words carry a whole lot of weight, so use them wisely. Father, for those who are not yet fathers, who wanted to be fathers, would you just be especially near and dear to them? Wrap those arms around them and let them know that it's going to be okay. Because if they're not dead, you're not done. Give them hope in this moment, in this season, in this time. Lord, we're going to walk outside of these doors. We're going to start living our lives. We're believing that you're going to be with us every single step of the way. Now I invite every single person to stand, every single person in this place and online to stand with us. Lord Jesus, we're going to pray about these great things that you are going to do, that you have done and you are about to do again. Thank you for this opportunity to be in this together, that, Lord, together we would build each other up and see what it is that you want to do in your family, in this body, as we follow your lead. We believe you for it all, Jesus, and we ask it in your name. And everybody said, amen.